This is Lorenzo, and this is the Training Map Taxonomy video series, lesson number 13. It's on the 9th dimensional skill, helping you build pressing strength in the vertical vector. All right, so this is part 4 of our 4-part pull press vector series, as well as the very last video in the Training Map Taxonomy video series. To the left of our matrix, we have our dimensional skill. Which dimension are we looking at? The vertical vector. Which domain? In the pressing domain. Which skill? Today we're focused on vertical vector overhead strength. The muscle groups involved are the anterior and mid deltoids, as well as our triceps. Master every facet of overhead strength, and you will build beautiful delts and tris without even trying. To the right of our matrix, we have our modality benchmarks. Today we're going to explore 4 performance targets, 3 in the gymnastics category and 1 in the weightlifting category. We will then move to the adaptive capacities column of our matrix. Here we will explore which mobility, stability and strength requirements that all these benchmarks share in common. And then we'll also look at what benefits are associated with moving towards or making meaningful progress and achieving those benchmarks. Okay, so for our first benchmark, we have the press handstand as the 27th benchmark in the series. The press handstand is a benchmark of dynamic straight arm stability. Next, we have the handstand push-up, a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength. For our 29th benchmark, we have the hollow back press or the 90-degree push-up. The hollow back press is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength as well. In the weightlifting category, we have the overhead or military press, which is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength and is the final benchmark in the series. As a quick reminder, in case you have forgotten, mobility is a function of flexibility plus strength. Stability then is a function of mobility plus control. In other words, stability transcends and includes mobility. Stability has strength, flexibility, and control. Power then is a function of stability plus either strength, speed, or endurance. Coming back to our benchmarks, the press handstand then, as you can see all the way over here, is a benchmark of straight arm and dynamic stability, which requires wrist, shoulder, and even hamstring mobility. It also requires shoulder elevation, pushing down to push up, strength, as well as core or compression strength, controlling my legs down. The press handstand is a beautiful demonstration of integrated static strength and dynamic control. Next, let's take a closer look at the handstand push-up all the way over here. As I mentioned, the handstand push-up is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength. And remember, if I say strength, I mean stability as well as power with an emphasis on peak force production overhead. It requires wrist mobility, shoulder elevation strength, as well as core stability to keep my body straight. The handstand push-up is also a benchmark of position, not of load, no weights involved, and not of time, but one of position. Once I've developed sufficient stability, I can work on strength to get 1 repetition. Once I can continue to develop strength, working towards 6 reps as a guy, and for the gals, 3 reps. Next, we have the hollow back press, also known as the 90-degree push-up, as you can see all the way over here. The hollow back press, as I mentioned, is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength. And again, if I say strength, it already implies stability and power, but power focused or emphasizing peak force production overhead. Also, just like the 360 pull, the hollow back press is a multi-vector benchmark going from a vertical eccentric press to a horizontal back into the vertical. It is also a benchmark of position, as you can see. Once I have sufficient stability and strength to do 1 repetition, I will then work towards doing 3 for the guys, and for the girls, you're working towards 1 clean, high quality rep. Finally, for our 30th and the very final benchmark in the series, we have the overhead or military press, as we can see here. As mentioned, it is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm overhead strength. It is also a benchmark not of position, not of time, but one of load. How heavy and how many reps? Your target for the guys, you want to lift 80% your body weight for at least 1 repetition. So for example, if you weigh 75 kilos, you want to lift at least 60 kilograms for 1 repetition. For the ladies, you are trying to lift at least 50% of your body weight. So for example, if you weigh 60 kilos, you are attempting a 30 kilogram 1 rep max. Now, as you probably already know, but the reason that I group these different performance benchmarks together in the way that I have is because they all share very similar mobility, stability, and power requirements. So for example, the press handstand, handstand push-up, hollow back press, and the overhead press all rely on or require shoulder flexion mobility, palvo-scapular core stability, palvo-pelvis, scapula, the shoulder blades. A very common compensation is arching the low back as an attempt to press things overhead or our bodies as well. So core stability is fundamental. And of course, each of these movements require and rely on sufficient dynamic and even static shoulder flexion and elbow extension strength. It is therefore also wise to work towards these benchmarks with the fewest number of exercises and routines as possible because they share similar requirements. So for example, what we have done is we've created a gymnastics routine called the invert-track. It's a 5 exercise overhead routine that will help you unlock the press handstand, the handstand push-up, and the hollow back press within a single routine. We also created a weightlifting routine called the press complex. A complex is very different from a track, as you'll see in the training routines taxonomy video series. But it's a 5 exercise routine that includes mobility, stability, and strength work, all dedicated to helping you unlock and achieve your overhead press benchmark. Apart from the obvious, why should we train vertical vector overhead strength? Well, number 1, if you want to restore shoulder flexion mobility as a way to reduce and prevent shoulder injuries, as well as experience more efficient overhead forces. Remember, the greater our overhead range, the greater our leverage, the greater our force producing capacity. Vertical vector overhead control and strength is the foundation for many activities of daily reaching. Developing strength in the overhead range will also transfer to other activities such as the push-ups, ring dips, and even the bridge for obvious reasons. For bigger and more balanced shoulder or deltoid and tricep development, focus on your overhead press work and you will automatically unlock beautiful delts and triceps. Finally, developing overhead control and strength is the foundation to many sports, including but not limited to gymnastics itself, lifting sports such as Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and many other throwing-based sports. So in summary, if you want to live pain-free, move more freely, live effortlessly, look your best, and excel at the sports that you care about most, then you don't want to skip vertical vector overhead strength press day.